The night was cold, and the city streets were shining with rain. The yellow lights from the lamps reflected on the wet road, and people hurried home, holding their umbrellas tight. Everyone seemed busy with their own life, not looking left or right. But in the middle of that rush, one young woman slowed down her steps. Her name was Sarah. She was only 23, but life had already given her many struggles. She worked long hours in a small shop, earning just enough to pay her rent and buy simple food. Some days, she skipped meals to save a little money. Yet, despite her own hardships, Sarah's heart was soft. She always noticed people around her, especially those who looked lost or forgotten. That night, she noticed something unusual. On a bench near the bus stop sat a man, alone. His clothes were wet, his hair messy, and his head bent low. He looked like he had not eaten in days. People passed him without even turning their heads. Some even pulled their children closer, as if sitting near him was dangerous. But Sarah stopped. She stood under her small umbrella and looked at him carefully. His hands were shaking from the cold. She could hear the sound of his teeth chattering. For a moment, Sarah hesitated. She was tired from her own long day. She had very little money in her pocket. Part of her mind whispered, "Just walk away, this is not your problem." But her heart whispered something else. If you were in his place, wouldn't you want someone to care? Taking a deep breath, Sarah walked closer. "Excuse me," she said softly. The man slowly raised his head. His eyes were tired, almost lifeless, as if he had lost all hope. Sarah felt her heart ache when she saw them. "You will get sick sitting here in the rain," she said. "Take my umbrella." She placed the umbrella gently beside him. The man looked at it but said nothing. Sarah opened her small bag and pulled out a sandwich wrapped in paper. It was supposed to be her dinner, but she knew he needed it more. She handed it to him. "Here," she said. "Eat this." For a few seconds, the man just stared at her. His hands trembled as he took the sandwich, as if he could not believe someone was really giving it to him. Slowly, he unwrapped it and took a small bite. His eyes closed as if he had not tasted food in a long time. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Sarah smiled faintly. "It's okay. Everyone needs a little kindness sometimes." The rain continued to fall, but the silence between them felt warm. Sarah wanted to ask about him, who he was, why he was here, and where his family was, but she decided not to push him. Some wounds are too deep to share with strangers. After a moment, she added, "There's a tea shop across the street. I can get you something hot to drink. It will help with the cold." The man looked at her in surprise. "You don't need to do that," he said quietly. "I want to," Sarah replied. She hurried across the street, bought a cup of hot tea with her last coins, and returned to the bench. The steam rose from the cup as she placed it in his hands. The man held it carefully, warming his fingers before taking a sip. His eyes softened for the first time that night. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Sarah paused. It was a simple question, but not easy to answer. Finally, she said, "Because everyone else walked past you. And I know how it feels when nobody cares. I don't want anyone to feel invisible." The man stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on his face. Sarah didn't know it yet, but that smile carried a secret. He was not who he appeared to be. Behind those tired eyes was a truth she could not imagine. For now, she only saw a stranger in need, and she only wanted to help. But fate had already started writing a story for her life. A story that would take her far from her struggles, far from the lonely streets, and into a world she never dreamed of. And it all began with a simple act of kindness, on a rainy night, toward a man who was not ordinary at all. The next morning, Sarah woke up early as usual. Her small room was cold, the walls thin enough to hear the neighbors talking on the other side. She looked at her wallet and sighed. Only a few coins remained. Rent was coming soon, and she had no idea how she would pay it. Still, she tried not to lose hope. She tied her hair, put on her old jacket, and left for work. Her shop job did not pay much, but it kept her going. On her way, she passed the same bench where she had met the stranger the night before. To her surprise, he was there again. This time, the sun was shining, but he sat in the same posture, his head bent low. His clothes were still untidy, and he looked like he had nowhere else to go. Sarah slowed down. A part of her told her to just keep walking. She had her own problems. But something stronger pulled her back. She walked up to him. "Good morning," she said softly. The man lifted his head. His face looked a little brighter than the night before, maybe because of the tea and sandwich. He nodded. "Good morning." Sarah smiled. "Did you sleep here all night?" He shrugged. "I had nowhere else to go." Her heart sank. She wished she could do more, but she barely had enough for herself. Still, she thought of a small way to help. She reached into her bag and pulled out a bread roll she had packed for her lunch. She placed it in his hands. "This is for later. You need your strength," she said. The man looked at the bread, then at her, his eyes soft with disbelief. "Why do you care so much? You don't even know me." Sarah paused, then answered simply, "Because kindness is free. And maybe one day, if I fall down, someone will help me too." The man did not reply right away. He just kept staring at her as if trying to understand her heart. Finally, he whispered, "My name is David." Sarah nodded. "Nice to meet you, David. I'm Sarah." From that day, their paths crossed again and again. Sometimes Sarah would see David sitting quietly in the park, sometimes near the bus stop. Whenever she saw him, she always stopped. Sometimes she gave him food, sometimes just a smile and a few words of encouragement. Her friends began to notice. One evening, her coworker Lena asked, "Why do you waste your time with that man? You don't even know if he's dangerous. He could be lying about everything." Sarah shook her head. "He doesn't ask me for anything. He just sits quietly. And if giving him bread or tea makes him feel human again, then I don't mind." Lena frowned. "But you barely have money for yourself. You can't save the whole world." Sarah looked down at her hands. "Maybe not. But I can save one person's heart from feeling forgotten." Her words surprised even Lena. Days turned into weeks, and David slowly began to change. His eyes no longer looked empty. Whenever Sarah appeared, he would smile faintly, something he hadn't done for a long time. He started talking a little more, telling her small stories about life and struggles, though never about his past. Still, he kept one big secret hidden. Behind those worn clothes, he was not a poor man. He was a millionaire who had chosen to step away from his wealth to see the world differently. He wanted to know if true kindness still existed, kindness without money or power. And in Sarah, he had found it. One evening, as the sky turned orange, David watched Sarah hand him half of her dinner again. His chest tightened. Why would someone with so little still choose to give? He had met many people in his life, but most cared only about wealth. Sarah was different. "You should keep it," he said firmly. "You need it more than I do." Sarah shook her head with a smile. "I'll be fine. I can always eat later. But right now, you need it more." Her words cut through him like nothing else ever had. As Sarah walked away, David whispered to himself, "This girl, she has no idea who I really am. And yet, she gives me more than anyone ever has." That night, David lay awake on the bench, thinking. The world had shown him greed, selfishness, and coldness. But Sarah showed him warmth, even when her own life was filled with struggles. A thought entered his mind. What if she knew the truth? Would she still treat me the same? Or would she change like everyone else? For now, he decided to keep his secret. But deep in his heart, he knew something. Sarah was not just helping him. She was teaching him the meaning of kindness, the kind that money could never buy. And he was determined that one day, she would see who he truly was. The days continued to pass, and each time Sarah saw David, she felt a strange connection growing. She didn't know why, but she trusted him. Even though he looked poor and lost, there was something in his eyes, something gentle, almost noble, that made her believe he was more than what he appeared to be. Sarah's routine was always the same. She worked long hours at the shop, returned home to her small, lonely apartment, and sometimes skipped her own meals. But no matter how tired she felt, whenever she spotted David sitting on the bench or walking in the park, she stopped. She always asked if he had eaten. She always brought something for him, even if it was only a piece of bread or a cup of tea. One afternoon, Sarah gave him an old coat she no longer used. It was a little worn but still warm. She placed it gently in his hands and said, "Winter is coming soon. You'll need this." David's throat tightened. He held the coat as if it were a treasure. His voice was low. "Why are you doing all this? You barely have anything yourself." Sarah smiled softly. "Because I know how it feels to be alone. My parents died when I was young. I had to take care of myself since then. I know the pain of having no one." She paused for a moment, then added, "If my small kindness can make even one day easier for you, then it's worth it." David lowered his eyes, hiding the storm of emotions inside him. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was not a poor man at all, but a millionaire living in disguise. But he stopped himself. If he told her now, would she look at him differently? Would her kindness turn into greed? He didn't want to risk it. So, David remained silent about his past. He allowed her to believe he was just a struggling man. But deep down, he knew he couldn't hide forever. One evening, Sarah invited David to sit with her on the steps of a quiet church near her home. The street was calm, the sky painted with fading pink light. Sarah gave him a small bag of rice and vegetables she had cooked herself. "You cooked this?" David asked, surprised. She nodded. "It's simple, but it's healthy. I thought you might like something warm tonight." David stared at the food for a moment before taking a small bite. He chewed slowly, then looked at her. "No one has ever done this for me before. Not like this." Sarah tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then said, "All my life, people only helped me when they wanted something in return. But you expect nothing." Sarah's smile was gentle. "That's because real kindness isn't about rewards. It's about humanity." Her words struck him deep. He had heard many speeches in his wealthy world, but none had touched him like her simple sentence. But not everyone saw Sarah's kindness the same way. Her neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Khan, pulled her aside one day. "Sarah, why are you wasting time with that man? He looks like trouble. People are starting to talk." Sarah frowned. "He is not trouble. He's just a person who needs kindness." Mrs. Khan shook her head. "Kindness won't pay your rent. Be careful, child." Sarah walked away silently, but those words stayed in her mind. Still, her heart refused to abandon David. She couldn't. Something inside told her that he was not what people thought. That night, as Sarah slept in her small apartment, David sat alone under the streetlight, thinking. He pulled from his pocket a small golden ring, a sign of his true wealth. He turned it in his hands, staring at it. Should I tell her the truth? He wondered. Should I let her know who I really am? But then he remembered her words, real kindness isn't about rewards. If he revealed himself now, she might think he had tested her. She might feel betrayed. And the last thing David wanted was to lose the only pure heart he had ever met. So he decided to keep his secret a little longer. Yet his silence came with danger. Because the more time he spent with Sarah, the more attached he became. And the more he feared losing her once she knew the truth. The following day, something unusual happened. Sarah saw David speaking quietly with a man in a black suit near the park. The man bowed his head respectfully before leaving in a luxury car. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Who was David really? Why would a rich-looking man treat him with such respect? Sarah's heart filled with questions, but she kept them locked inside. For now, she chose to believe in the stranger she had shown kindness to. But deep inside, a shadow of mystery was beginning to grow. And Sarah had no idea that soon, the truth would break through in a way she could never imagine. The days of winter grew colder, and Sarah's life grew heavier. The shop where she worked had fewer customers, which meant fewer hours and less pay. She counted every coin carefully, but no matter how hard she tried, the numbers never added up. Rent was due, and she was already behind. That evening, Sarah sat alone in her room, staring at a letter from her landlord. Her hands shook as she read the words. Final notice. Pay within 7 days, or leave the apartment. Tears filled her eyes. She had no family to turn to, no savings, no safety net. She whispered to herself, "What will I do? Where will I go?" At that very moment, a knock came at her door. Surprised, she quickly wiped her tears and opened it. Standing outside was David. But this time, something about him looked different. He wasn't wearing his old coat or ragged clothes. His posture was straight, his eyes calm, almost powerful. "Sarah," he said softly, "may I come in?" She hesitated but nodded, stepping aside. Inside, David looked around her small, dim room. The cracked walls, the single chair, the empty table, it all told him the truth about her struggles. His heart ached. Sarah tried to smile. "I wasn't expecting you tonight. Is everything okay?" David looked at her for a long moment, then said, "No, Sarah. Everything is not okay. You've given me kindness every day without asking for anything in return. But you deserve to know who I really am." Sarah blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, David reached into his pocket and pulled out the golden ring she had seen once before. He placed it on the table gently. "I am not the man you think I am," he said. "I am not homeless. I am not poor. My name is David Kahn, and I am the owner of several companies in this city. I am a millionaire." For a moment, silence filled the room. Sarah stared at him, unable to believe what she had just heard. She laughed nervously, shaking her head. "This is some kind of joke, right?" David shook his head firmly. "No joke. Everything I told you before was true, except my life story. I walked away from my wealth for a while because I wanted to see the world with my own eyes. I wanted to know if kindness still existed without money. And then I met you." Sarah's lips trembled. Her mind spun with questions. "So, all this time, you were rich?" "Yes," he said quietly. "But none of the wealth I had ever gave me what you gave me. You offered me food when you had little for yourself. You gave me your coat. You gave me your time. You gave me humanity. And you did it without knowing who I was." Sarah stepped back, her heart pounding. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I was afraid," David admitted. "Afraid that if you knew, you might change. Afraid that your kindness would turn into pity or interest in my money. I wanted to see the real you, and Sarah, you showed me something rare. You showed me pure kindness." Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. She felt betrayed, yet she also understood. "Do you know how many nights I worried about you? How many times I gave you food that I needed for myself? And all this time, you had more than enough." David's voice broke. "I know, and I will never forget what you did. That's why I am here. To repay you, and to make sure you never suffer again." Sarah shook her head. "I never helped you for a reward, David. I helped you because it was the right thing to do." David moved closer, his eyes filled with sincerity. "And that is why you deserve everything I can give. Not because you asked for it, but because you never did." Sarah's tears finally fell. She sank onto the chair, her heart torn between anger and compassion. She had always believed in kindness, but now she had to face a truth she had never expected. The man she had trusted, the man she had helped, was not a stranger in need, but a millionaire in disguise. That night, after David left, Sarah sat in silence, staring at the golden ring he had placed on her table. Her mind was full of questions. Could she trust him now? Was he truly grateful, or was this just another test? One thing was certain, her life had changed forever. And soon, she would have to make a decision that would shape not only her future but also David's. The night after David's revelation was long and sleepless for Sarah. She lay on her small bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. Every memory of him, the rainy night, the bench, the tea, the coat, played again in her head. Was it all a lie? Or was it real? Yes, he had hidden his wealth, but his hunger had been real. His cold hands had been real. His eyes filled with sadness had been real. Sarah whispered to herself, I helped him because he looked lost, not because of who he was. But still, the thought of being deceived cut deep into her heart. The next morning, Sarah dragged herself to work. Her face was pale, her eyes heavy. She avoided her friends' questions and kept silent. She tried to focus on arranging goods in the shop, but her mind refused to stay still. In the evening, as she left for home, a black car stopped in front of her. The driver stepped out and opened the door. To her shock, David came out, dressed neatly in a suit, his presence commanding yet gentle. Sarah, he said quietly, please, come with me. I want to show you something. Sarah hesitated, but finally nodded. She climbed into the car, her heart beating fast. They drove through the city until tall gates opened, leading to a grand house with shining lights. The car stopped in front of a mansion so large it felt unreal. Sarah stepped out, her eyes wide. This is your home?" she asked in disbelief. David nodded. "Yes, this is my world. But it has never felt like home until now." He led her inside. The marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the servants waiting politely, it was all overwhelming. Sarah felt small in that space, as if she did not belong. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked softly. David looked into her eyes. "Because I want you to see the truth. This wealth means nothing without someone who truly cares. I have money, power, respect, but none of it gave me peace. You did." Sarah swallowed hard. "I don't know if I can trust you again. You hid such a big truth." David stepped closer. His voice was firm but tender. "I know I broke your trust, but everything you saw of me on those streets was real. The hunger, the cold, the loneliness, they were mine. I wanted to feel what others felt. I wanted to escape my golden cage. And in the middle of that emptiness, you appeared. You gave me kindness no one else ever gave, not even when I had nothing to offer in return." Sarah looked away, her heart torn. David gently continued, "I don't want to buy your forgiveness. I only want a chance to make your life better, to give back what you gave me, hope." At that moment, Sarah's landlord's words echoed in her head. Final notice. 7 days. Her future had seemed hopeless only yesterday. Yet now, here was a man offering her the world. But Sarah's heart whispered, "I never helped him for this. I helped him because I couldn't walk away." She turned to David and said softly, "I don't need your money, David. I don't need your mansion or cars. I just want honesty. If you can promise me that, maybe I can trust you again." David's eyes shone. He bowed his head. "You have my word. No more secrets. From this moment, only truth." Sarah studied his face, and for the first time, she saw not a millionaire, not a stranger in disguise, but simply a man, lonely, human, and grateful. Over the next days, David kept his promise. He helped Sarah pay her rent, but not as charity. Instead, he offered her a proper job at one of his companies, where she could earn with dignity. He supported her dreams, encouraged her to study, and slowly built her confidence. Sarah's life began to change. She no longer worried about her next meal or her home. But what touched her most was not the money, it was David's respect. He never treated her as less. He never forgot the rainy night when she had given him her last sandwich. And as days turned into weeks, their bond deepened into something stronger than either had expected. One evening, they walked together in the same park where they had first met. The bench was still there, shining under the streetlight. David stopped and looked at Sarah. "This is where it all began," he said. "A stranger on a bench, and a young woman who refused to walk away." Sarah smiled faintly. "And who turned out to be a millionaire." David chuckled softly, then grew serious. "No, Sarah. I turned out to be a man saved by your kindness." She looked at him quietly, and for the first time, she felt peace. That night, as the cold wind brushed past them, Sarah realized something. Kindness had changed not only David's life, but also her own. What had started as a small act had written a story of trust, hope, and love. And so, a young woman's kindness to a stranger had opened the door to a future she had never imagined. A future where her life was no longer filled with fear and struggle, but with dignity, respect, and a heart forever remembered by the man she once saved.